Welcome back. It's been a while, but I'm back now, ready to release an episode of the podcast every Wednesday on all podcasting platforms and my YouTube channel. In this episode, I'm joined by Brix, a fellow brick filmer. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description. Definitely check his stuff out. With that being said, I hope you enjoy this week's episode of the Nothin But Bricks podcast. Welcome to episode 7 of the Nothin But Bricks podcast. Today I'm joined with Brix. Welcome to the show.
Hello, yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So to start off, do you want to talk about what got you into brick filming?
You probably hear this a lot, but probably sort of people like Forest Fire 101. I think a lot of people were influenced by him because he's been around for so long. Most of the stuff I make now is sort of like, I guess, modern versions of stuff I made when I was a lot younger. I remember when the Lego movie came out, there was like a free app on the App Store that was sort of made making brick films quite easy for those who had never done it before, because it just sort of had everything all in one app. And I remember I basically had a go at making just a handful of random stuff, and obviously they weren't very good, but they were sort of a lot of fun, and they sort of got me started in it. And then sort of more recently, I've gotten quite into, so a few years ago now, I basically sort of love writing scripts. But one of the issues I have is I write these scripts, but then obviously I don't have the resources or money or whatever to actually create them. But what I do have is a ton of Lego and a camera. So what I tend to do is just sort of write scripts and then use Lego as a way of realizing them and creating them into actual sort of media.
Yeah, cool. We were talking about it on the most recent episode 6, with just Zach Pat, about how it is a lot easier to make brick films because when you're shooting like live action stuff, you can't really get it as perfect as you want it, and you can't really reshoot it that many times because they're real people giving their time for your project. So it's definitely a lot easier to use Lego figures.
Yeah, and also sort of things like editing as well, like because you have the ability to sort of go through frame by frame. It sort of means that visual effects, it can obviously, it takes quite a long time, but you can do them to quite a sort of potentially quite a high quality if you wanted to. Whereas with live action, it's a lot harder to go through frame by frame and make it look actually good, because for a start you've got either a load more frames, or it's just a lot harder to split it frame by frame depending on what sort of camera equipment you're using. And I mean, camera equipment is another thing. Like with a brick film, most phones people have in their pockets are capable of, as long as you can take photos in HD, you can do a pretty good quality brick film. Whereas live action, the difference between having amazing lighting and just trying to shoot a film on your phone is sort of like a massive difference. And it's very hard to get anything looking vaguely professional just on your phone.
Yeah, definitely. Like when I was starting to make them, I made them on my iPod Touch a few years ago, and I definitely remember that the camera quality was pretty good. Just because they're like it's easier to film them if they're just Lego figures with a phone. Yeah, definitely. So, uh, what was the hardest like scene you've ever had to shoot in a brick film?
Ooh. It varies quite a lot depending on. So, actually shooting, most of the stuff I do is a lot, it's more sort of comedy rather than action, which means the actual filming part is quite easy. The part I spend longest on is probably writing, but a lot of it's just sort of still frames or minimal movement. But then occasionally I'll have sort of like a bit of movement. I think probably some of the Halo Mega Bloks videos are probably the biggest pain to animate, because the figures, they just don't stand up nearly as easily as a Lego figure does. They're just not as well balanced, which means that if you try and sort of get them at an angle to sort of try and, like, say someone gets shot and you want them to just fall over, it's so hard to get them at the right angle so that they don't just plummet mid-frame, and you have to try and, yeah. But then at the moment I'm editing a video, which will be out probably in a few weeks, but in that it sort of involves Mace Windu as a ghost, and for that I'm basically editing every frame individually to sort of give the ghost effect, which is probably the longest I've ever spent on any sort of shot, I guess.
So is that like masking out the bricks underneath him to make him like float like a ghost, or?
Not so much floating. He's sort of still standing at the same level, but it's sort of because it's like Star Wars. He's a grey ghost, so he can't be the same sort of. He's got to be a bit sort of not transparent, but have like a color sort of coming from him. I'm doing it in probably the most sort of ghetto way possible to do editing, but I basically throw the image onto Microsoft PowerPoint, and then I basically copy the image twice and have two. So I have two separate layers. And then on the first layer, I basically crop it so it's just Mace Windu, and then I just color that image blue and overlay it, and then it sort of gives off the right effect.
That's cool. Yeah, I've never actually heard of anyone using PowerPoint, but that sounds cool if it works. Yeah. Um. So can you tell me a bit more about the Mace Windu video? If you like anything that you wouldn't want to, if you don't want to spoil it, it's okay. But is there anything that you can give away about it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's not a very long video, to be fair. I mean, the vague premise of it is essentially you've got. So if you remember the scene from A New Hope, where Obi-Wan and Darth Vader meet after all those years, and sort of Darth Vader does this whole like, Obi-Wan, when we last met, I was but the master. Sorry, I was but the apprentice, but now I am the master. And then Obi-Wan's sort of like, yes, it's nice to meet you again, Darth. So it's sort of that. But as Darth Vader claims he's the master, Mace Windu, who in Revenge of the Sith was the one who sort of said, you're on the council, we don't give you the rank of master, basically pops up as a grey ghost, and he's just like, oh, hell no. And then it's essentially just him bullying Darth Vader for about a couple of minutes. And then, yeah.
Sounds funny, yeah. Cool. So you mentioned that you do comedy videos, but have you ever like done any other kind of genres before?
Yeah, I played around with. So I've done a video called Old Friends about probably a couple of years ago now. And that was a Mega Bloks Halo one, which I've got sort of plans that I could. I'd like to make a series based off of it, but I'm sort of unsure about how exactly I want to take the path. So I'm sort of leaving it shelved for the moment. But that one was sort of like more of an action sort of kind of thing. So in that video, you've basically got a character called I think it was Gravestone. He's some sort of assassin mercenary, and he's basically sort of trying to get this sort of drone, and then he sort of takes out the guards. He's about to take the drone when his sort of an old friend. So it doesn't. I sort of deliberately left it quite ambiguous, but he's basically some sort of old colleague or another sort of assassin who he used to work with, called Steve, I think, sort of appears, and they sort of fight it out. And then it basically ends with Gravestone, who's sort of been completely manipulated by whatever or whoever he's working for, orders the drone to kill Steve at the end. And then, yeah, so it's not particularly long, but it's sort of the most action-y sort of thing I've done.
Cool. Yeah. Sounds like it would be worth a watch. Yeah. Cool. What's your favorite part about the brick filming process?
If you asked me this probably a couple of years ago, I'd have probably said the shooting or the writing. I think I enjoy the writing the most. That's the bit that I would ever sort of. That's the only part I'd ever potentially focus a career on. But the actual, the animation part is more just a way of executing what I like to write. But I do enjoy the editing quite a lot. It's sort of quite satisfying, sort of getting all your sort of voice actors' lines in, all your frames, adding in a little bit of extra magic, and then you sort of finish the end result and you've got a video which sort of started off in your head and now you've actually got the MP4 file in front of you. But I think the part I find most rewarding usually is just the comment section, because it's just sort of like just the knowledge that people are actually watching your videos and they've enjoyed them, which is sort of always nice.
Yeah, definitely. I really enjoy looking at the comments as well. Yeah, because it's like, oh, it's not like it pays off in the end.
Yeah, exactly.
To put in that much work and time. So do you keep up with the Lego sets that would come out?
Yeah, I sort of on Instagram I sort of follow accounts that sort of show me the sort of the leaks and stuff. So I'm always sort of fairly knowledgeable at what's coming out. But I don't buy Lego that often, as much as I used to. because I basically I have a lot of it, so it's sort of hard to store it all if I get too much more. In the new wave, there's a couple of sets I'd like to get. Obviously, the Five First Battle Pack. I think a lot of people have been waiting for that for years, and the figures in that are just really nice. So even though I'm not sure I'd necessarily use them for much, I'd like to collect them, partially just because I love collecting the clone troopers and the stormtroopers. But then also from the same wave, that Separatist tank set just looks quite nice. So I might get that as well.
Cool. Yeah. So you mentioned that you make Halo type videos and Star Wars videos, but are there any other like types of videos that you'd make?
Yeah. So I've got quite a range at the moment on my channel. I've got I think Star Wars and Halo are probably two of my favorite sort of franchises. So I do not a fair bit with them, but a few. But I've also got I do a Lego Batman series, which is probably one of my favorite things because it's just completely stupid humor, and I can sort of just go a bit nuts with it. I don't really care particularly about sort of like continuity and everything because it's just sort of designed to be completely stupid. And it's the first series I ever did on the channel, and I've sort of managed to keep the voice acting team pretty much the same all the way through, which is also nice because they've all gone through it with me. I've also done a handful of Marvel videos because the Avengers films are sort of some of my favorite things, so it's always fun to do stuff with them. And then I've also just got like a handful. Not all of them have been released yet, but I just do some sort of standard Lego videos, like Shooting Star or Mafia nicknames, which are on my channel at the moment. But then I've also got one called Superhero Morals, which should be out on Monday, which will be fun. So those aren't part of any particular franchise; they're just sort of their own thing. And then I've also got a series that I'm starting called The Adventures of Jeff and Tom, which is similar to Batman in the sense that it's just sort of very stupid, sort of incoherent adventures with a couple of characters, both voiced by myself. And then every episode, I'll sort of try and get one of my mates to sort of come in and voice a sort of guest character, which will be fun. So yeah.
Cool. So do you enjoy doing the voice acting yourself, or is it kind of like a thing that just needs to be done for the videos?
I think initially it was more something that just had to be done. Like in the first videos I did, so sort of the early Batman episodes and things like the Halo ones that I did initially. Those I sort of did pretty much just because I needed the characters and it was nice to voice my own stuff. But nowadays I really sort of try and go for it because I do enjoy voice acting. I do it for some other people as well. And I try if I can to sort of do like a silly voice or something. Like in my most recent video, I voiced Professor Dumbledore in a Hogwarts video, which was a sort of quite a fun impression to try and do. Not that it sounds anything like the guy in the film. I just sort of came up with a voice in my head and went for it. But yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I recently got into voice acting myself as well. It's a lot of fun to really go for it as you were saying and get into the characters mindset and just uh, yeah, it's a lot of fun. That's what I was trying to say. Um, yeah. So you mentioned that you are editing some of the shots from your video in PowerPoint, but what would be the usual process for making your videos?
So the process that I normally do for my videos isn't particularly complicated. So normally I'll just sort of be on Instagram or on a walk or something, literally just any mundane task, and a sort of an idea will pop into my head. So, for example, the other day I was sort of, or maybe I'll be like looking at my collection of minifigures and sort of thinking, what if this figure did that? So the other day I was messing around and I basically made like a custom Cookie Monster minifigure because I was bored, and I was like, that'd be just a fun figure to have. And then I was sort of thinking, I was like, I should probably make a video with him. What could Cookie Monster do? And I sort of came up with the idea that perhaps maybe he gets involved in like a mob gang or something ridiculous like that. So then I'll sort of sit down. I'll be like, right, okay. Well, now I've got to. What actually happens to him? And I'll just sort of start writing, and the ideas will sort of come to me, and then I'll sort of end up with a script in front of me. And then after that, I sort of go through the characters, go through the dialogue, check it's actually funny, There's not too much sort of rudeness or whatever. And then I sort of think, all right, well, which characters have I got who that I know can sort of who do a good voice for these characters, and then I sort of have like a little cast list at the top of the script, and I sort of say, all right, Cookie Monster, well, I can do a Cookie Monster voice, I'll do him. But then Stabby Steve, or he appeared in another video, so that'll be Sean, and then blah, blah, blah. And then after that, I'll then sort of message all of my voice actors who I want in it. And I'll sort of say, hey, can you voice this character, this character, this character? And normally they'll be like, yeah, sure. When do you need the lines by? I'll say, depends. If there's a deadline, then I'll give them the deadline. If not, I'll just say whenever's easiest for you. And then once I've sort of got most of the lines, then I'll be like, all right, well, it's sort of, yeah. And then I'll sort of build a set for it, or multiple sets, depending on how long the video is, how sort of many different scenes it has, etc. So then sit down, obviously animate it, which is the longest part of the thing, but that's sort of quite a chill part because you just sort of put on a movie or something and just do it over the course of a handful of days, depending on how much action, whatever there is. And then obviously once you've done that, bung it onto the computer, then just sort of do all the dialogue, set it out. By this point, most of the voice actors will have sent their stuff in, so I can sort of get properly started on it. Then sort of align all the frames of the dialogue, whatever. Then add in some sort of sound effects or bleeps at the swearing. And then by the time I finished editing it, all the voice actors tend to have sent in everything, so I can sort of have the whole thing done. And then after that, it's just a matter of uploading and creating a thumbnail.
Cool. Sounds like a pretty fun process, yeah. Yeah, mine would be kind of similar. Like I just come up with a random idea, and then I wouldn't really usually write a script. Like I only wrote a script for a super long video, and then just kind of like a little bits of dialogue for other videos. But I wouldn't really like plan it out first for the shorter ones I did. I just kind of started animating, so and tried to figure out from there. But I should probably start planning them out better.
I mean, it depends what works easiest for you, to be fair. Like, I like having sort of like quite a lot of organization with mine, so it's sort of handy for me to have a script there, because it means I can sort of say, all right, I need a shot of this, a shot of this, a shot of this, a shot of this. But it does sort of, I guess, limit creativity a bit, whereas with your method, presumably, you can be doing it, and then you'll be like, oh, but what if I did this? What if I did this? And then you can potentially end up with a sort of longer or better video, because if you just added in extra stuff that you've thought of that you wouldn't necessarily have done if you were just following a sort of set of instructions.
Yeah, pretty much. Like when uh, when I do the improvised stuff, it's just like fight scenes basically. So I can just make cool shots that I think might turn out really good up as I go, and then just see what happens in the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun process, to be fair. Like, we wouldn't do it if it wasn't. But I guess it can be tedious at times, particularly if you're animating something. I mean, I don't do that much action stuff, but you, based on your videos, I'm assuming you do more than me. And that can be quite irritating, especially if you sort of come up with something in your head and you're like, oh, I want it to look like this. And then you do it and you just cannot for the life of you get it to look exactly the same. Whether or not it's because your camera isn't good enough, your set isn't quite the way you imagined it, or the figures just keep falling over or something like that. But normally it's just find a way around it and you end up with something you're happy with by the end of it, which is always good.
Yeah, like I'd be the same with fight scenes. Like even though I enjoy animating them and figuring out like different things I can add in, it's still frustrating when I'd have an idea in my head and it doesn't always turn out the same as what I wanted. But yeah, it's like you were saying, like you'd still be happy with it afterwards. Yeah. um what kind of like brick filmers would you enjoy watching at the moment?
Ooh, I don't actually watch as many as I used to. In fairness, people like Forest Fire obviously are always good. He doesn't upload as much anymore, but his old stuff is always just a great to watch. And then people like Flapjack Films, I find him really sort of entertaining. He just does sort of like short sort of compilation-y kind of videos a lot of the time, but they're just very funny. Edbound is sort of, I found him quite recently, and he's just brilliant. He uploads, I think, once a week, which is quite impressive for the quality of his videos as well. He's an amazing animator, but he's also comes up with an original idea every week without sort of really exception, and it's always amazingly executed, professionally done. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I really enjoy Edbound's stuff as well. Yeah. But there's actually a video I found made by a guy called, his channel name is just Chihuahua, but I think it's like some other name before and they changed it.
Oh, Spastic Chihuahua, I think, was
Yeah,
his original. Yeah, he's quite good.
yeah. He put out a video recently called he made the steamed hams scene from The Simpsons in like a recreation in Lego, um, and it looked really cool. I think he made it using like instead of actual Lego figures, he used some kind of software to like 3D animate things.
Yeah, that's always quite cool is when you see sort of people like him. I think Forest Fire's done it a little bit as well, but they've sort of started off doing brick film, but they've sort of developed into doing far more impressive sort of things with like 3D animation, stuff like that, and they've sort of branched out, which is always quite, it's also quite inspiring as well, because sort of like that could be sort of potentially you one day. I think one of the two of them, I can't remember which, got hired by a pretty big TV network to do some stuff, and then they also occasionally, you see sort of brick filmers appearing in quite big YouTubers. If I think it might be Bart Baker or someone, some quite big YouTuber, did a sort of a day a year of singing the sort of the Smash Mouth All Star song, and one of the sort of the days in that was animated by someone who I cannot remember who.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's really cool to see like people who found brick filming in the beginning branch out into different kinds of animation and find success through them. Yeah, it's really cool to see. Um, so is there anything that you'd want to end the show on? Like anything you want to bring up?
Um, I think a lot of inspiration I have from sort of stuff comes from not so much brick filmers, but I think there's probably, I'm a bit biased, I do comedy stuff, but from sort of YouTubers like Tomska or other sort of sketch comedians like Studio C or Key and Peele. But yeah, I think so. I don't actually watch that much brick motion as much as I used to, in fairness.
Yeah, I definitely get what you're saying with like drawing inspiration from other people that don't do brick films. Like, it definitely makes for a more unique kind of style than just like copying someone else's kind of style for brick filming. When you take other aspects from different things and then put them all into your thing and make it your own, it kind of makes it super unique.
Yeah, there's also a lot of freedom that comes from it because you can sort of be in a situation where you want a massive lightsaber fight, and obviously in real life that'd be quite hard to execute. But if you've got a Darth Vader minifigure and an Obi-Wan minifigure, you can just slap them together and build a little set around them, and boom, you've got the Death Star.
Yeah, yeah, um, yeah. But do you want to talk about your channel again, just to end it so that people know where to find your videos?
Yeah, sure. So my channel's called Will's Bricks. I do sort of mostly Lego, but occasionally things like Mega Bloks Halo videos. They're quite short usually. They're just little comedy videos of stuff that I personally find funny, and I hope you guys do too.
Cool. I'll leave a link in the description as well so people can find it there too.
Thank you.
But thanks for coming on the show.
No problem. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, and this is the first one back after a bit of a break, but it was a good good episode to get back into it. Yeah, so thanks again. Hello, thanks for listening and watching this episode of Nothing But Bricks. Subscribe if you're new. Tell your friends about the podcast if they also like Lego or brick filming. Hope you enjoyed listening to it. Hope it was entertaining for you. Check out Will's channel, link in the description. I'll see you next week. Goodbye.